If you are just tuning in, we encourage you to go back and listen from episode 1. This podcast may contain content that is graphic and disturbing in nature. Listener discretion is advised. Previously on Direct Appeal.
There's all of this, she poisoned him, then she shot him. This bottle is found in his car, but it's not found in his system. Bill's own sister even conceded she believed him to be using steroids, and it would explain a lot. The specialist said it could be my handwriting, as likely as it might not be. Technical for I don't know. Anybody with kids that age would know there's no way that you could drop these kids off, drive a couple miles. The fact that there's missing footage, how the hell is there missing footage? What the hell do you mean these days we're just lost? My attorney's like, listen, your phones are probably buzzed. I'm heard saying to him, why are you talking like this? These were the questions the police were feeding him. I want to judge it. I want to be angry at it. But at the same time, I understand the fear and the intimidation. My issue was that the intimacy continued after that fact.
This is episode 8, Unfaithfulwife.net. Last time, we covered the chloral hydrate prescription. The prosecution would argue that the chloral hydrate was used by Melanie to sedate Bill. We also covered the trips that Melanie took to Atlantic City, the Easy Pass charges that she would later petition to have removed from her bill, and the trip to Delaware. So this time, we are going to talk about this last trip to Delaware. It's the trip that Melanie says she went furniture shopping.
Sorry, the last trip to Delaware. So the 3 to Atlantic City. This is now the 4th trip that we're discussing. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And this is actually, the prosecution says this is the trip to Virginia Beach. So when
to drop off the suitcase.
The suitcases.
All right.
So the trip to Delaware and the trip to Virginia Beach are one and the same.
Okay.
It depends on whose version you actually believe.
Okay.
So the prosecution was able to elicit, if you recall, on the stand from Brad Miller that Melanie said that she took a trip to Delaware on May 2nd. She said she was on the phone with Brad and she said, I'm going furniture shopping, something like this. And the prosecution thinks, aha, this is it. This is the trip in which she must have driven Bill's body in the suitcases to Virginia and gotten rid of or disposed of the suitcases over the Chesapeake Bay Bridge. This is a big part of the case. This is disposal of this body. Virginia from Melanie's parents in New Jersey was about 6.5 hours. So
and when did she have time to do this?
So the prosecution says that she had left the night before. Her parents were watching the kids. Melanie took off the night before, which would have been
an all-nighter.
Yep, it would have been, I think, the night of May 1st. She drives through the night. And she disposes of Bill's body off the Chesapeake Bay Bridge.
Still 14 hours round trip, though.
Yeah, about that. And then she returns the next day, and she's coming through Delaware. And what she says is, no, I just came to Delaware this morning to go furniture shopping. So the prosecution says this is a cover. This is part of her story. What does Melanie have to say about that?
So Monday night, my folks meet me halfway home, and they take the boys. I check out some more apartments. I go home that night. I talk to my mom, and, I'm dejected at this point. I want to sell everything. I don't want anything left from this life. And I have a bunch of really expensive, heavy Thomasville furniture. I have no interest in moving. So my mother suggested Delaware, and it's 45 minutes from my mom's house, and it doesn't have any sales tax. So that's what I did that morning. My parents are early risers. Talked to them both that morning before I left. I think I left about 7:30 from there, maybe a little bit later. The decision was made to not call my father because my father actually was being targeted by the prosecution as well as a potential accomplice. And his attorney didn't want him anywhere near the process, which is, of course, understandable. In terms of my mom, the decision was made to not call her because my legal team felt that the jury wouldn't really put much weight in her testimony. That's your mom, of course she's going to lie for you. I thought it was a mistake at the time. I argued the point. I understood their point as well, though. So I deferred to them ultimately because they're the ones who do this for a living. I didn't actually make it into any of the stores because my phone rang. It was Brad, and I said, what's going on at the office? And he said, just another Tuesday. I said, oh, shit, Tuesday. I'm supposed to be meeting Celine for lunch that day. So I hopped on the turnpike and started driving north so that I would be on time to to meet her. Plans were for New York. I left Delaware. It was about an hour and 45, 2 hours, and I actually had made a purchase on my Amex card while I was waiting for her, and the prosecution would ultimately end up saying that I made that purchase in order to establish an alibi. Of course, the cell phone records would have established that alibi for me, especially since I was using my phone constantly, but they somehow managed to get my husband's cell phone tower records and not mine, even though our personal cell phones were part of the same account. So it almost defies logic that you could obtain cell tower information for that account and not get both numbers. We got our billing information, but we were told that the tower information was no longer available. That's what I was told. My attorneys were told.
Okay, let me explain. There's a lot of information.
I have a lot, yeah.
I know you have a lot of questions. So this is Melanie's explanation for this trip to Delaware. And what she says is the night before, she had given the boys to her parents earlier,
Where did her parents live at this point? In New Jersey, right?
Yeah, was
somewhere south? Barnegat?
Barnegat, I think. And she had met her parents that day, given them the boys so that she could go apartment hunting. She says after she went apartment hunting, she returned home that evening around 6 or 7 o'clock. She spoke with her parents. She was there for the night. They all went to bed. They woke up the next morning. She says that she had already spoken with her mom about going to Delaware. She says, I talked to my mom that morning. They both saw me, that I probably left at about 7:30 a.m. So I went to Delaware. And I was early. I realized the stores weren't quite open yet.
You just realized that when you get there? Come on.
Maybe not. I don't know.
Okay.
That is what she's saying, that she realized that and that she decided to, while she was waiting, she just started making her phone calls. And so when, she calls Brad because she talked to him a lot. And when she's on the phone with him, he says, it was Tuesday. And she goes, oh shit, I'm supposed to meet Celine for lunch. And I think, according to her, this was an important lunch. She was going to tell Celine this news, and Celine was going to help her make a plan.
So important that you forgot about it?
So important. Good point, Amy. So she says that she gets in her car and she basically hauls it to New York to meet with Celine. Now, if you're following the prosecution's side, the prosecution would say that was part of her attempt to establish an alibi. But that would mean that she has been driving probably then about 16 hours.
Straight.
So I asked Celine about this. So how did she seem to you, Celine? And let's hear.
She looked perfectly fine. She looked completely normal, not disheveled. We met lunch early, I think probably like 11:30. And she was fine. She just, was there to tell me what happened with Bill. She didn't seem like anything. It was very casual. It was a very casual lunch. She told me what was going on. I told her that, I could help her financially get a lawyer and get it, done with. And I was happy that she was getting it done. And then we left, and that was it. And she paid for lunch, and they said that she needed that for her alibi, for her to pay for lunch. But we always took turns to pay lunch. I did, it was, that day was hers, and it was Red Lobster. It was like $60. It wasn't, anything.
First of all, if you're going to go to New York City, you don't go to Red Lobster.
I was thinking the same thing. She told me a story. I'm like, they hit it at Red Lobster?
Right? Like, why? There's so many good restaurants. Okay, so first of all, if I have plans with my best friend and I'm 2 hours away, I call in cancel. I understand it was an important lunch, but why not just reschedule? Okay, fine. Maybe maybe they both took off work, whatever it was. Fine. I could get over that.
Okay.
I do have a problem with the fact that I mentioned this before. My problem is furniture stores don't open that early. Why would you go to Delaware and get there at 8:30, whatever it was, 8:45? That makes no sense. Everyone in the right mind knows stores don't open that early.
Right.
Why would you not check the website or so? I don't know. I have a problem with that.
I have a problem with it too. But early.
What's the alternate theory? Where else is she? Is she going to hide more evidence? Is she actually going to, I don't know.
No, they're saying she wasn't going there.
I'm saying if she was actually at her parents' though. I'm saying if she, because she said she was sleeping at her parents' house, right? Her mom saw her dad's house.
If you believe that she was sleeping at her
you
parents.
You either believe one story or the other. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you believe that she was at her parents' house.
Then she went to Delaware for whatever reason.
She went to Delaware for furniture purposes.
Gotcha.
Maybe she thought there'd be traffic. Maybe she stopped for coffee along the way. Maybe she wasn't even thinking about it. Just get in my car and go.
Okay.
And she could have thought also, I've definitely made the mistake of being off by an hour thinking a store opens at 9 when it's really 10.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, I'll get over that. No cell phone info. So she says that her lawyers were told that there's no cell phone info on her phone. told by the prosecution or told by the phone company?
By the prosecution.
Yeah, I don't like that.
I have a huge problem
and
here.
And her lawyer just said, okay, thanks anyway. I mean, how does her
My
lawyer...
second question, Melanie doesn't have an answer for that. And it's one of her main points. She says, you know what? This whole conversation would be moot if all you did, and she said this earlier on, pull my phone records.
And then you could place me.
So here's the odd thing. And by the way, this is one of those questions I would have definitely liked to ask the prosecution. They were able to pull Bill's cell phone records, right? And then someone might say, well, they're two different phones. No, they shared a line. They've got the same phone, the same phone company. So they pull all of Bill's records, but they never pull Melanie's, and they say they were unavailable. And I don't know what the defense officially said or didn't say, but pretty much they accepted that. And there was none of her records were ever pulled.
The only thing that I could think of, and I don't even think this is plausible, but is it possible that she was like out like in a roaming area, so like it didn't pick up? I don't know what phones were like back then.
Well, that's what she said. She said, well, the towers, we couldn't get the tower information, but what about the records
that she was at her parents' in that morning or
the whole rest of the week? She says, look, if you would have pulled my records for this week, you would have seen exactly where I was all week long. And at least I would have been able to give some credence to, I'm not at a Walgreens at this time, or.
Yeah, I'm shocked that her lawyer didn't just call the phone company himself. Right?
I did ask her, and she said we just didn't. They said this information was not available. And I don't know what they did or did not do. And let me make mention again. I contacted Joe Tecopina twice, and he did not return either of my calls. I also contacted Stephen Toronto twice, and he did not return my messages. So we would have loved to ask them. We still would, but these are questions that would be better answered by her defense attorneys. All we know is that this information was not made available. So Bill's information's available, but hers is not. I have a substantial problem with this.
Yes, I do too.
Okay, so she says, that her mom, she saw her mom, she talked to her mom. So we asked Linda about this.
She was looking for an apartment, so she was going to be looking for furniture. So she said, I'm going to go. And I said, okay, good, go. We'll take the boys up to school. And that was it. Thought nothing more of it. I know when I saw my daughter and where she was. And that morning I did see her. I wish I could have been on the stand. It was ridiculous. I mean, we had to take the boys to daycare the next day up in Edison from Barnegat. And so we had the car seat in there. I mean, she must have had his body in the driveway, in the car. There was nothing in the car. We saw her car. We saw our car. There was nothing in our car. There was nothing in her car. It was always, they tried to make it sound like, I don't know, that we were making things up about where she was, what she was doing. It didn't seem like anything that was strange to me.
So that's Linda saying, look, I saw her in the morning. We talked to her. I saw the car. Now, Melanie had mentioned before, I asked, why didn't they call your mother? She said, well, it's my mother. So
I understand that.
Would a mother lie? Yes. And there's no doubt that it's a call, right? Whether or not it's the right call, I'm not sure. Look how
I don't think it could hurt.
I think, we met with Linda. We talked to her. We've recorded this.
Very genuine.
I think Linda would have been a great witness. Mm-hmm. I don't think that she would have buckled under any pressure. Mm-hmm. I think she would have come across in the same fashion. Look, like she said, this is ridiculous. Mm-hmm. I saw her. Okay. You're not going to tell me what I did or didn't see. Yeah. I talked to her. I saw the damn car. Mm-hmm. There's no body in it, and I think that would have come across on the stand. So I have to say, for me, it's a fail that they didn't call Linda.
Yeah, I agree. Because like I said, even if it didn't help, I don't think it could have hurt. Right.
I don't think it could have hurt either. Do you remember in the Casey Anthony trial? They called Cindy Anthony.
Oh, of course.
And I mean, Cindy Anthony got up there and told, a story about her doing these computer searches. Yeah. And as it turns out, she was at work at the time. And, everyone speculated, or a lot of legal analysts were speculating, like, she's not telling the truth up there. And I'm not saying this is the reason why, but, Casey Anthony was acquitted. So it didn't hurt her.
Yeah.
Didn't hurt her to have her mom testify. I think Linda's real credible.
She is.
And here's the second fact. We have to say whether or not she's credible. I have to say, secondly, I believe Linda. I don't think that Linda had anything to do with any part of Bill's murder. I don't think she knows anything. And I think she 100% believes her daughter is innocent.
I 100% agree with you.
Okay. The next part about that is, so the prosecution says she, let's say you don't believe Linda. She took this car, she drove it, she drove the body. Melanie gave consent to search her car, and they did not find a thing in her car. No DNA, no blood, no signs of a dead body. I find it really hard to believe that the prosecution would not have run a cadaver dog through that car. I think that's something they do in big cases now. For signs of, even early signs of decomposition. Apparently cadaver dogs can smell decomposing body within something like less than an hour of decomposition. So I'm sorry, this is a huge case.
They did that on Bill's car, though. They did run the cadaver dogs on Bill's car.
I don't know if they ran them on his car. They found skin tissue that they sucked up with a vacuum.
I could have sworn we talked about that last time. I could be off, but I know they did not run it on hers. I don't see why not. Why not?
Well, so she said that point as well. Did they run it and they're just not reporting it? That would be a violation. So we definitely can't say that. Yeah. But I'm not buying that they're not running a dog through this car. Yeah. And I'm not buying that if she did transport his body, that there is absolutely no trace of it in her car.
Yeah.
I don't believe that.
Could she have used Bill's car to transport the body and then taken a cab back from somewhere, or?
I don't think so. No. Bill's car is in Atlantic City too soon.
It is.
It's in Atlantic City, right after. So I think, look, could it be in an accomplice car? Sure. That's not what the prosecution said. Mm-hmm. They said that she drove her car. So, but they don't find anything.
Yeah.
So where do we stand then on this trip to Delaware? Where do we stand on?
But Delaware's still not Virginia.
I'm sorry, where do we stand? So again, in Melanie's version, it's a trip to Delaware.
Yeah.
In the prosecution's version, it's a trip to Virginia Beach. And you pointed something out, Amy, before. I don't know if we talked enough about this, but on the route, are there other bridges?
There's 4 major bridges. And like I mentioned, the Delaware Memorial Bridge, if I'm getting rid of a body, I'm throwing it over the Delaware Memorial Bridge.
Right.
That's an ocean.
It's an ocean.
I think an ocean, you have more luck in, a body never turning up in an ocean than in a bay.
So why drive then? Why make a 7-hour trip?
I don't know.
I saw an interview her dad gave once and it resonated with me. Why would she make this trip? Knowing what if the car breaks down? What if she gets pulled over by a cop? You have a dead body in the car and you drive 7 hours. Aren't you looking for a quicker route?
And you're surrounded by water. You live in New Jersey.
Yes.
You're going to Delaware. There's bodies of water everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah. This doesn't make sense for me either that she's driving.
And like I said, that's a bay. Unless there's something I don't know about bays and how the currents work, it doesn't seem like that's a smart place to put a body. It's more likely to turn up. Yeah, it doesn't. And she doesn't have ties to anything in that area as far as we know.
The only ties that they had were they had friends who lived.
Bill's friends, though.
Bill's friends, yes. That's the only tie I know. Bill has ties to Virginia. That's the thing. So Bill was, he lived in Virginia, I believe, after he returned from the Navy. Mm-hmm. So he has some ties there, but Melanie specifically, not that I know of, no.
It makes no sense.
Right.
But so who are Bill's ties there? I know the Rice couple.
Yeah.
That are his friends. Does he have other?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
And I'm going to read a report later, actually, a report that states when he lived there, about for how long, but I don't know the extent of his ties.
Is it possible he had some long-standing feud with someone who lives there? I mean,
anything's possible at this point, right? We're speculating now. I do know I'm not. Again, I don't believe that this trip was one. I don't think she drove to Virginia Beach with Bill's body in the car overnight, dumped it over a major bridge, and then drove back. I think the prosecution had it wrong in this case.
Not to mention, even if she did do that middle of the night, someone would have seen something. 3 suitcases, right?
Going over the edge. And
of a very busy bridge.
For anyone who hasn't, I crossed over this bridge once before. This is a busy bridge.
Yeah.
Now, even if it's an obscure time of night, this is not a small bridge where
there's
you
always
can
truck drivers
always traffic through the night. So Melanie decides, you know what? I've got a brilliant idea. The best place I can stop to throw a body over is the middle of one of the longest bridges on the East Coast.
It doesn't make sense.
No, this is not a win for me. I don't buy this part at all.
Yeah, neither do I.
But then again, you didn't like that she was going to Delaware furniture shopping in the morning.
Yeah, but I don't think that means she necessarily was in Virginia.
Okay.
And there's no other bodies of water that are connected to that bay in which she could have maybe dumped it in Delaware and the currents took it over to the Chesapeake Bay?
I mean, I guess that's possible. I think the prosecution had an oceanographer or some other expert who determined based on the currents and the weather where the body most likely would have been dropped from.
So they're pretty confident, because I was going to say I would believe a story more if it's possible that over the amount of days it's possible that the body was dumped somewhere further up north.
I'm sure it's possible. I don't think that was in dispute on either side, though, that the body, I think they were pretty confident that it was in that general vicinity.
Okay.
So,
and no surveillance cameras on the bridge.
No surveillance. The bridge had surveillance, but by the time they went with this investigation, I guess, or by the time they were actually looking, by the time they figured out where these suitcases came from, they probably thought it was more likely that the suitcases were dumped from someone, a boater, and not by someone standing near the bridge or at the the base of this bridge. They probably assumed that a boater in the Bay Area had gotten rid of them.
So does Bill know anyone who owns a boat in that area?
I don't know.
Did Melanie rent the boat?
No, I don't think so.
No.
At least there's no surveillance.
I don't think the timeline would have allowed for her to rent the boat and do all that.
I don't know. She's done a lot in this timeline.
Yeah.
So, okay, that covers the Delaware. So the trips, the easy passes, the Delaware/Virginia Beach trip. The prosecution presents, now they get into computer forensics. So they are going to get into searches made on the McGuire's home computer. And remember, this is at a time, this is 2004, we're not looking at laptops. We're looking at...
I was just going to ask, they only have one computer?
Yep, it's a desktop. So, the big desktop that sits there. And it was a shared computer. They both used it. Although I think we could probably argue that Bill used it a little bit more than Melanie. But
Melanie probably had a computer at work, and she works a lot.
She did, yes. So this is, I guess we would look at this as the computer forensics.
At that time, everybody said computer forensics was the term. Now we use digital forensics, dealing with electronically stored information. So these are, files and data that are stored on computer devices, like your PC, your laptop. It can be on portable personal devices like smartphones and, old school PDAs, gaming systems, any type of digital storage device. So anything, of course, the Internet of Things today, where anything and everything can be considered a computer because, data is being stored on it, data is passing through it, where my job would be to find specific types of information and report it back. Normally when you'd be working with, the law enforcement agency that had that evidence, what we would sometimes get is what's called a forensic image, which is really a copy of all of the data that was on a hard drive or other storage device. This is typical when you're working the defense side of a digital forensics case, because as far as an analysis perspective, that's as good as getting access to the original hard drive. And the computer itself, there really isn't much information you're going to get from that other than verifying that the clock setting on the computer is accurate. But even then, that doesn't normally have a huge impact on your analysis.
That was Jesse Lindmar. He was an expert for the defense. Jesse, at the time, worked for Miles Technology, and he was employed by Tockerman and Toronto to look at the internet searches. The prosecutor called their own expert first, because we're on the state's case and they go first. And their expert was Jennifer Seymour. And she testified that there were a number of incriminating searches on the McGuire's home computer.
It was 8 desktop PCs, 3 laptops, 8 handheld cells, and 1 BlackBerry. So I'm guessing that's mine in my home with Bill, mine in my home after the fact. A couple PCs that I know my parents had, and probably Brad, and I think Bill's work computer. These are being accumulated from various places. Here we go, Jennifer Seymour. So she was basically saying the important directive that she was given was the time frame that they wanted her to search. So in other words, they didn't have her search the entire hard drive, and she stressed that her CD was not all of the searches, but just some. So we're given these some searches. The ones that are being identified as problematic, this is what we're trying to address. Here it is. Purchase guns without permit was found on April 16th. Instant poison, gun laws, there you go. toxic insulin levels, fatal dig doses, that would be the drug digoxin, which is a cardiac medication. Undetectable poisons, that's the one that most people hear about a lot. How to commit suicide, how to commit murder, how to purchase guns illegally. Additionally, the Walgreens site is also looked at in terms of locators. Of course, it looks horrendous. We're being reactive. We're trying to react to those things that are problematic. We're not trying to be proactive and identify things that could possibly help us or lead to the truth. We're on our heels at this point.
Suicide?
Yeah, suicide came out in the searches as well.
So
clearly I asked Melanie. Melanie, says that she didn't make any of these searches. She said she didn't search for guns. She said that she did know that Bill did because they had discussed, again, her getting a gun. She knew that he had searched a couple of times. She even saw him do one of the searches. She said she had no idea about the searches for poisons,
how do we know who searched
sedatives.
What? Were they the only two that had access to their home computer?
Well,
did they have a babysitter? Did they have anyone else in the house?
No, they didn't have anyone else.
Okay.
So, and I doubt their 1 and 3-year-old were able to type in searches for poisons and guns. Yeah,
but I have a problem with, unless we can, say who's sitting behind that computer. I mean, it tells two different stories depending on who's searching it.
It certainly does. So can we say that? In a couple of minutes, I'm going to get to, our best guess at that. But so Jennifer Seymour is, again, the prosecution's expert. She gets up there and she says, this is what was searched. And of course, this is going to be one of those moments for the jury when they're going to go, oh my gosh, poisons are searched, sedatives are searched, chloral hydrate is searched.
Yeah. I have a question. So Melanie said they were looking at some things. It sounds like they were kind of cherry picking a little bit. It was confusing to me.
That's actually a really good question, Amy. And what Melanie says is that later on she's going to say, well, here are the searches that they didn't tell you about.
Yeah.
So we'll get to that too.
That sometimes tells you more than,
Right. So they have their expert. Their expert has said, oh, this is what's going on. Melanie's team retains Jesse Lindmar, and he talks a little bit about what he actually did for the case.
What they ended up getting was a big report of web browser history. All the data eventually runs through net analysis, and you get almost kind of like a spreadsheet view of all the web browser history records. This would have been, again, thousands of individual records. And again, a record, think of like a spreadsheet. A row of information is a record, and that row of information is going to tell you the date and time that the internet resource was accessed, the user account, the type of browser, the address, the URL. So let's say if it was a search, there are certain parameters that you would see in that address to indicate that a search was being conducted, let's say on a search engine like Google or, whatever else might have been in existence at the time. What I do remember is prior to trial, Stephen Toronto, his assistants there requesting paper. They wanted this printed, and they wanted 2 copies, one for them, one for the prosecution. And I do recall being up all night long printing with every accessible printer I had, and it was a stack, thinking, well, geez, okay. I mean, I guess you need paper, for a couple of purposes. Number one, for shock value, because you now have this, 1.5 foot high stack of paper. And 2, of course, to hand, opposing counsel a stack of paper to go through is a lot more daunting than a couple of pages to go through. So I imagine that's just part of the game that's played there. What they were trying to show, the defense was trying to show, was other activity that was occurring on or about the same time as searches and activity that the prosecution was trying to focus on. So, that was my take on it. And like I said, that was nothing I was privy to ahead of time. That was just all, from what I remember, on the fly on the stand.
He didn't say what he found, though. He says the methodology they used.
Yeah, he's telling you about the methodology. When we interviewed him, he didn't recall that many specifics.
Okay.
I think...
But from the transcript, what was...
Melanie, and Melanie, there is in the transcript, and Melanie recalls some of the specifics. Actually, I think Melanie talks about what their expert found.
I remember sitting there on the floor in the conference room at Joe and Steve's office with all this stuff spread out around me. It had to be 7 o'clock at night, and just looking at this stuff and going, what the hell is this? Because I don't know it's there, and now all of a sudden, here it is. and this is yet again something else we're going to have to contend with, the searches around these quote-unquote problematic searches. One was a gambling website. One was Bill's retirement account that physically required his name, his password. On the 11th, Bill's on at 7:32 on his email. 7:34, just over 2 minutes later, undetectable poisons. 1 minute and 59 seconds later. 12 minutes after that, gaming source. 20-second time difference, again, to undetectable poisons. Even the gun shop one, again, it had the zip code for his job. So even if he was the one who had given me information in terms of, here's a few phone numbers, here's a few places that are pretty close, to where you work or whatever, and the state's contention was that it was me. I had done that to cover my tracks. To look up things that I could have looked up in a book on my desk at work untraceably, or that I already knew. If I'm getting up there on the stand and I'm saying, listen, I don't need to look up undetectable poisons on a computer. I know what they are, and even if I didn't, I can pick up an untraceable book sitting on my desk, look this stuff up, put it down, and nobody's any the wiser. Why would I create, essentially, an electronic record that does nothing but incriminate me?
Why would Bill want to kill her, though?
All right, Amy, you stole my thunder. All right.
Sorry.
We're not saying that he did, by the way, but I'm
just saying that's what it's implying. So first of all, I think it's a slam dunk for the defense. That's huge to show that he was the one doing those searches, at least some of them.
Well, you think so, right? But the prosecution said, no, it's her trying to act like him.
Got it. Yeah, she's logging into his accounts to make it look like.
But also, here's what the jury didn't hear that was found later.
After the trial, I'm here, I'm incarcerated, and a friend of mine has a copy of all the internet history, all the internet searches. This lady goes through 500,000 lines, literally 500,000 plus lines of searches and code, and she ultimately locates searches that include how to kill your wife, how to poison your wife, and unfaithfulwife.net. But we didn't know that at the time, so nobody could really elicit that kind of testimony from her. And I have a feeling that those times, those targeted times that she was given to sort of focus around, I have a feeling that those were very much tailored to exclude some of these searches. The unfaithful wife tells me, okay, maybe he suspected. The how to poison your wife, when you look at it by itself, you can rationalize it. When you look at it in the context of other searches, it becomes very upsetting. It becomes terrifying, in fact. I still don't know how to feel about that. I don't know if it's something that he just sort of typed in on a whim just to see what would pop up. I have no idea, because for me to sit here and think that something that much more sinister and that much more insidious could have been going on, I can't. I've never been able to quite wrap my head around that. Who knows where else he was searching this? The other issue at hand is that his laptop was quote-unquote examined and basically dismissed as not having evidentiary value. It was Ms. Seymour who made the judgment, and the not of evidentiary value, when they asked her, was based on the search parameters that she had been given. She didn't find any of those keywords or phrases, supposedly, on that laptop. Now, who the hell knows what else is on there? We made a motion during the course of my PCR asking to gain access to the trash bags as well as Bill's laptop, and we were denied. Because at this point I'm convicted, and post-conviction relief is not a fishing expedition, as they call it. You would have to have some good faith reason to demonstrate why you didn't do this before. So our contention was, well, we didn't know how to poison your wife existed before. And again, we were denied.
What do you think about that, Amy?
I understand why they were denied if you look at, the definition of post-conviction relief. But, I mean, wow.
So,
wow.
Amy's speechless.
Yeah.
So they had Bill's laptop, but they wouldn't let the defense never got to access Bill's laptop.
How is that not a Brady violation? Because they decided that there was no exculpatory evidence on it, so they get to decide that it doesn't need to be turned over? I don't understand.
I didn't understand that either. They said it was not of evidentiary value. And
according to them, that's
according
subjective.
to them, the judge agreed. The judge, they brought this issue to a judge, and the judge said yes. So they didn't do technically anything wrong. But
so they didn't do anything wrong, but
they said it wasn't relevant. Also, they're saying this is Bill's computer, right? The computer that they, initially looked at, the home computer, was the shared one. So Melanie's the defendant. They want to look at her.
But if we're trying to, the prosecution's not doing this, but if we're trying to get at the truth of what happened to this victim, understanding the victim's life, their correspondence, that's very relevant.
We understand this. I mean, we teach about this victimology. Even when you're not blaming the victim, understanding the lifestyle of the victim and what role, their activities play is like essential. So this is almost criminology 101 for us.
I want to talk a little bit about unfaithfulwife.net.
Yeah. Which doesn't exist anymore. We looked it up.
Oh,
no.
Boo. But why would he be? It almost seems like that's a website for maybe women who are being unfaithful. Like, what is he looking for there?
No, I think I interpret this to be he figured out his wife was having an affair. Unfaithful wife. He's looking at unfaithful wives.
Oh, this is like one of those like sites that are like, this is like
probably how to figure out if your wife is.
Yeah, like these are the people that we know. Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So I would assume here this means that maybe he has some inclination. Not to get too personal, I asked Melanie about this at one point. Do you think Bill knew? And she goes, look, I can't say whether or not he knew. I can tell you unequivocally that we were not intimate for close to 2 years.
Oh, her and Bill weren't.
Yes.
Okay.
She said so. I have to imagine he knew something. I just assumed we were kind of leading, different lives.
2 years, that
point.
means when their kid was conceived was probably the last time they had sex.
That's basically what she said. Yeah, that's basically what she said.
All right. So, but I'm still having trouble with, it seems as if he was the one who was searching poison your wife based on the surrounding searches. But do you think, since he's searching unfaithful wife and poison your wife, he's that angry that she might be unfaithful, that he's thinking of poisoning her? It seems like a stretch.
Well, we don't know what he was thinking, but your point before is I'm still not sure who was doing these searches, right? You're not sure if it's him. So I had asked Jesse Lindmar, was there a user profile done? And this is what Jesse said.
One of the hardest things to do is actually being able to put somebody physically at the keyboard when an event is occurring on the computer. There are ways to attempt to do that, but it's very difficult to say whether, a certain activity that happened on the computer that was conducted by a specific person sitting in front of the computer. Like I said, I just did a web browser history analysis, but you could do much more. You could go through again and determine, what kind of user accounts are on the computer. How are they being used? What other activity was occurring around the same time as the web browser activity? It would be interesting, now so many years later to see what other stories you could uncover. Sure, you've got this activity of interest, maybe let's say these incriminating searches. You have these. Okay, what other activities occurring that might let you show who was on the computer at that time? And for example, if you see an incriminating search, and then prior to or after, seconds, minutes, whatever, you see access to a webmail account for, Mr. McGuire's, work email, then you would ask, well, who would normally access that webmail account? Do you need credentials to log into that account? Maybe a username, a password. Who has knowledge of that username and password? Is that username and password stored in the browser so it'll automatically load them in when you visit it? Again, outside of the web browser, what else is going on the computer? Is somebody working on their taxes? Is somebody working on their CV? Are they writing a novel? You look for that surrounding activity to better show who might have been on the keyboard when that activity was taking place. So, no, I was not asked to do that type of analysis, although it could have been and still could be done. It just really depends on whether anybody is still retaining that evidence somewhere.
By the way, Jesse Lindmar is a graduate of FDU.
He is.
Yes, he is.
That's so funny.
I know, it's pretty exciting when I talked to him about it.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's an interesting question about the automatic sign-on. When I use my computer, a lot of my, like if you were to look at my history, it would show I was on my bank account, I was on this, on that, but it's automatically stored in my computer.
Right.
So technically anyone could be doing it and it looks like it's me.
Right. Was it then though? This was 2004. I don't think automatic
they have
sign-in.
the pop-ups that say, do you want to remember?
Yeah.
I don't know if they did, actually.
But I have to also say, for me, like my bank, I have to log in every single time. I'm not able to log it. There are certain websites.
Yeah.
And Bill worked, again, he was a computer tech guy. I have to imagine that when he was logging into his computer work emails, there was more serious password protections.
Probably security is better. Because I'm just wondering, is there any way to put Bill or Melanie behind that computer?
Well, Jesse is saying, that you can do, again, the best you can do is a user profile, right?
Yeah.
So Jesse actually provided us, or it was in the discovery. He provided it at some point with these records. He provided us with a database inadvertently. And remember Melanie said this woman was searching through my internet history. So we had those records, and she's right. She said something over 500,000. As I recall, we had over 400,000, but not quite 500,000. And we have their entire search history from 2002 to 2004. Now,
do tell.
Yeah, so here are the things we put together. We're trying to do what Jesse says to do, is reconstruct the use. Can we say for sure? Of course not. Like you said, could there be automatic login? Sure. But is there for every single account?
Or as the prosecution claims, could it be that Melanie was, purposely going to websites that look like it would be Bill? But again, if you're looking at it from 2002 to 2003, she might have been doing that around the time, but not.
Why would she even do that though? Why would she even, she's looking for all these, poisons and sedatives, which are not the same thing, by the way. They keep getting conflated, but they're not. And she's looking through all of that. And then she signs into Bill's accounts to make it look like him. Why go through that trouble? Why not, as she said, just use the damn book that she had in front of her? Why create any electronic?
Did they look at her work computer? I can't imagine they didn't.
I'm not sure, but I don't also think she had her own work computer. I think they were, shared terminals probably. And I can't imagine she was doing a lot of, searching at work for this kind of thing. From all accounts, Melanie was a really busy nurse, working, tending to patients and whatnot. But again, it almost seems like she's going through extraordinary lengths.
Yeah, it's almost
cover
too much. Yeah.
It's too much, right? Either don't do the search or do it.
Exactly. Or she could have gone to a library, or, she could have used a computer that's public somewhere.
I'm going to say, we can't say with the guns, but with all of these sedatives, she had the PDR, the physician's desk reference. She could open the book and look at it without ever having to go on a shared computer.
And she didn't need to. She knew already. She had the common knowledge.
She did have the common knowledge. So, a lot of this, we can't say for sure, but what we did do was make some attempts to look at their browsing history. And here's what we found. We went through a lot of it, and we narrowed it down to the sessions and the days on which there were these damaging or incriminating searches. So I won't go through everything, but let me tell you some of what we found. We start one search. Let's see, we have a search on Monday, January 21st, and this is 2004. So this would be about 3 months before Bill's disappearance. Okay. So on that day, by the way, we were able to verify through emails that Bill had the day off.
Did Melanie, do you know?
She did not.
Okay.
On that day, someone searches for poison. That's the day. That's the Poison Your Wife and unfaithfulwife.net. A little while after that, I say, those searches happened early, but about at 9:15 a.m., so about an hour later, there are searches for workplace harassment and employment lawyers. I looked at, Bill was actually getting ready to file, it looked like, a suit against his employers. He said that he was being harassed by someone.
Interesting. Do you know any more information about that?
I don't have much, but I do recall seeing it. I definitely recall seeing it, that he was making some allegations about workplace harassment. I don't know how serious it was. But so that definitely would have been Bill. So that's on January 21st. We looked more on April 4th. So this is only...
between January and April, did you not look at those, or nothing popped up really?
Yeah, we didn't see very much that was, normal activity.
Gotcha.
And again, we were able to say that clearly this was both their computers. It looked to me, and we could ask James later, even looked to me that Bill was using the computer more of the time.
They were looking at typical things, like he was looking at sports, he was looking at shopping.
Kind of, yeah. He used it a lot to look as well at real estate. Remember, they were getting ready to buy this house. He spent a lot of time looking at real estate. He spent a lot of time, or a considerable amount of time as well, on his email and on retirement accounts.
Any online gambling?
He was doing day trading. So we definitely linked that to him. So on April 4th at 8:24 a.m., we have how to poison someone. Right after at 8:37, we have carcast.com.
Why is that relevant?
It's not necessarily relevant, but it's who do you think was going to something about carcast.com.
Okay.
We think it was Bill. We cannot say for
There's
sure.
no way. Is that the only search that would lend itself to be Bill's?
On that day.
Yeah.
But I think April 4th is not that important of a day.
Okay.
As we go on, you're going to see a little bit more. On April 11th, 7:32 p.m., someone logs into Bill's email, checks a couple emails, then proceeds to MSN. Next, about 2 minutes later, there are searches for undetectable poisons. At 7:36, CarCast is visited again. Then searches for undetectable poisons going on for a couple of hours.
Okay, let me ask you, when it says he logs onto the email, checks a couple of emails, are you able to also see if he sends any emails? Are you able to read those emails or just, okay, it just says emails were, okay.
Yeah, we couldn't get that.
Okay.
Okay, so that was April 11th. So again, if we're trying to construct our own user profile and we can't say for sure, if we're making a guess, which is more probable, if it's Bill's emails on April 11th, I'm going to say that was more likely Bill. On April 16th, 7:35 p.m., we have someone searching gun laws in Pennsylvania. Someone also, after guns, a few minutes later, is searching poison and instant poison. Right after that, at 7:51, they're back to searching guns and gun laws. So it definitely appears that whoever is interested in poisons is also interested in guns.
And again, it could be either. Let me ask you,
Could be either, right?
Were you able to cross-reference any of these dates and times to see who is at work or not at work or is that sort of like the next step maybe?
So, we know that Bill was off on one of the days.
Yeah, that one you mentioned.
We don't know about these other days. Some of them were weekends.
A lot of them are it looks like evenings too.
They're evenings and weekends, exactly.
Did Melanie work in the evenings at all?
She did sometimes. She was on call. But this part would have been really hard to show. Now, her counterpoint would have been, guess what? If you had my cell phone records, you would be able to see that I wasn't doing these
and then
searches.
you could look at this next to that. Oh, that would be beautiful.
Right, exactly. But I think it's important to know again that who's ever looking at guns is looking at poisons. It looks like they're back to back. All right, Sunday, April 18th. I'm going to say this is a big day for searches, okay?
Yes.
So at about 4:56 p.m., we have guns. Right after at 5:03, we've got poisons. Then we've got toxic fatal insulin doses, 5:18 to 5:21. One of the points here might be that that insulin can be used by steroid users to keep muscles. We did some research on this.
What else could it be used for, though?
Fatal insulin.
That's really the
diabetes. It's insulin, so it's diabetes, or it could be used again. The search is for fatal insulin doses.
It seems to me the person searching instant poisons probably found that one way to do it would be by insulin doses, right? So
Possibly.
It's almost like it probably took them to that next place.
It's possible. James was able to parse out that some of these were actually searched, though.
Oh, gotcha.
I think these are, I believe that one, what you're looking at, is not one. I believe it was instant poisons and then search for toxic fatal insulin doses. You see right after, the internet activity is continuing. Fatal digoxin doses, instant detectable poison.
I'm sorry, what is that?
Digoxin is an anti-arrhythmia pill.
What does that mean?
It regulates the heart, so
that's
it's fatal.
Interesting.
So stopping the heart, perhaps.
Yeah, okay.
And then look at this right after there, about 5:40, we see how to commit suicide.
Oh, but if I do recall you saying that Bill did talk to his sister about being depressed.
Again, this is the only thing I can. We don't know who's doing the suicide searches. Don't know if it's Melanie. Don't know if it's Bill. But
I'm sorry. Even if, let's say we can say that it seems as though Bill may have been suicidal, there's no way he shot himself and cut himself up.
No. And we can't say he was suicidal for sure. But he obviously did not.
Yeah.
He could have, he did not cut himself up, clearly. So even if you argue this, we still don't have the answer to how the rest of the crime would have occurred, right?
Yes.
When you start looking, you see the continues. Again, we're back to how to purchase guns legally, how to purchase rifles, insulin, diuretic poisoning deaths. Now look at that. Poisoning deaths, 6:22 p.m. to 6:27. Then there's a 2-minute break in activity, and then Melanie's remote desktop is activated.
Oh, boy. What does that mean exactly? Does that...
It's her work account is activated. So you look at this now, it could mean, it could be Melanie this whole time, right?
Yeah.
Or It could be. So
I get off the computer. I need to check my work email.
Exactly. So I'd asked Melanie about their computer usage, and she said, and this wasn't in relation to anything. She said, I can't even tell you how many times I had to like boot him off the computer. Like I need to use the computer for 5 minutes for work. So could it be that? But then you look at it 4 minutes later, 6:33, we're on morphine poisoning, nicotine overdose, oleander poisoning.
So she checked her email for 4 minutes, it seems. Which you could imagine, like, husband at the computer, I need to check my work email just to see if I got an important email. Up, didn't get it, it's all yours, right?
Yeah, I can actually.
Okay.
It's possible. I do think that's a possibility. Now, look, it goes on. There's oleander, chloroform. Then there's a 5-minute gap, and at 6:56, someone looks at NeimanMarcus.com women's shoes and beauty products. And I go, uh-oh, this has got to be Melanie. But, okay, I stop for a second because I think, well, I've interviewed Melanie now in person and on the phone. I've interviewed Melanie certainly more than 40 hours, 50 hours in total. And she's told me I've asked a lot about her lifestyle and habits. And I think back and I go, Neiman Marcus is this really nice place. But I know Melanie wasn't a Neiman Marcus shopper, right? She was a Target girl. Yeah. She was a TJ
like
Maxx.
Me.
I know. So I'm thinking this.
And Bill didn't have a confirmed girlfriend at this time, did he?
No, there was no way to confirm whether or not he had any relationship.
I was going to say maybe he was looking, but...
So that crossed my mind. So then I decided to look at, I've got stacks of paperwork. Like I said, they're sending me everything. And I come across this old document. It was a document, I'm not even sure who assembled this, but it related to all these searches. And it references this search. And it says, Neiman Marcus search relating to Bill writes to Cindy and Nancy.
What does that mean?
So Neiman Marcus search relating to letter that Bill writes to Cindy and Nancy. I said the same. What does this mean? So then I ask Melanie, and she says she vaguely remembers that Bill had an argument with Cindy about a Neiman Marcus purchase. And so then I had asked Linda, independent, and she said, oh, I remember that. And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, they had, according to Linda, according to Bill.
Okay.
Bill was upset because he had just loaned Cindy some money to get her realtor's license.
Okay.
And again, this is all secondhand information. And Cindy had, I guess, made a purchase at Neiman Marcus for something that was a little expensive, maybe a jacket that was a couple $100, $300 or $400. And Bill was supposedly angry at this. And I guess he looked it up and he was writing, this is somewhere in evidence too, but he wrote a letter apparently to Cindy and to Nancy about their spending of their mother's inheritance and his spending.
But why would he go to Neiman Marcus for, it's only 1 minute. Like, what are you doing for 1 minute?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe he was looking it up. Let's see what she bought.
And then he decided, I don't feel like maybe he was having trouble navigating the website. So he went from shoes to beauty and he's like, forget it. I'm just going to go back to what I was doing. It's possible,
but it was right around this time. I did verify that at least there was some, there was something, because I went, this sounds weird on both accounts.
Yeah.
I don't see Melanie shopping there, but so I was kind of able to verify that there was something.
And it is only 1 minute.
Yeah,
so it's not like if it was a woman shopping, I don't know about you, but if I'm looking at shoes, it's not for 1 minute,
no,
right?
Of course.
Yeah,
that's a great point too. So,
that's interesting.
Yeah, that is. And I did see, like I said, I saw a letter, something. There's something that he was upset over a Neiman Marcus purchase that was made by his sister. So it's possible he did just click on. And also, if you look right after there, at 6:57, we're back to
which
retirement
is 1 minute
site.
later.
1 minute later. That's Bill's retirement site, Bill's email, classmates.com, Bill's email, real estate. That's all Bill.
Okay. So Melanie's the only time we know she's there is that 4 minute gap where she's checking her email.
You know what's interesting too? She would even say, she probably said, if I asked her about this, that, yeah, I could have been doing it. But remember also, she alleges that Bill was accessing her work email or her work. Remember that.
Oh, that's true.
She's saying that he was clearly accessing patient information of mine.
So it's possible that she was. I wish we had her phone records. This would be so easy. If she was at work that day, this would be a slam dunk.
What are we going to do?
Nothing.
We don't have that.
Okay.
Okay.
Keep going.
We got to keep going.
Yeah.
So the last search that we have, or two more searches actually. One is on April 26th. This is 2 days before Bill disappears. At 6:56 p.m., Bill is on his email. 7:08 p.m., John's gun tackle room is searched.
They had already had their gun by now, though, correct?
This was the day that Melanie got it, April 26th.
She got the gun
on April 26th.
So if she was getting the gun that day, then she was not home on the computer that day.
That's a good point too, isn't it? But you could say, well, she got the gun in Pennsylvania 45 minutes away or something of that nature. She could be at home at some point searching the computer.
I guess. Hold on. What time of the search is? Okay.
If you look at the rest of the searches, they're in the evening too. You got 7:45 p.m. And going on for how long? It looks like it goes on for about an hour and a half.
Again,
you got insulin
suicide.
shot, cardiac sedatives, alcoholism, Nembutal, euthanasia, suicide.
Wow.
And then look at that 8:25 mortgage websites visited because they were closing on their house.
Was that a login like specific to Bill? Do you know?
No, it wasn't specific to Bill. It was a mortgage website.
But he was the one who was always searching.
He was the one handling that.
That doesn't mean that she didn't do it.
Nope,
I'm just saying. But
definitely not. Insomnia, chloral hydrate page visited.
Chloral hydrate.
And that is that's the last one on 8:29 to 8:42 p.m.
And that's the last
day. If you look at the last day that they have searches here, is April 27th, 5:55 p.m. And that's just for home equity loans.
And that's the night in question. Right?
No, April 27th was the night. April 28th was the day of the closing.
Gotcha. So the 28th, so 24 hours before this all allegedly went down, home equity loans and bankruptcy.
Yeah, well, because
with bankruptcy.
They had bankruptcy at some point. Bill had declared, or maybe they had joint bankruptcy. It wasn't just Bill; it was the shared. So they were looking at what happened was they needed to come through with last minute financing for their house. So this is...
But where is April 28th, the most important day?
Well, that's the day that they went out. They dropped the kids off.
So
they went to the closing.
There's no
They were together
history
all day on that day.
And there's no computer. I mean, there's no searches.
No.
And there's not much going on April 27th, which is too bad. But there's a lot going on April 26th.
A lot going on. So there's a lot going on all these pivotal days. And so if you're to construct a user profile, we can't say at all.
No.
But if we were just basing it on the searches and the types of searches that that were made, I would have to say it's more likely that Bill was making the searches.
Yep. But it looks like he stopped searching for a poisoning wife and almost went from like, I'm going to kill her to I'm going to kill myself. If you notice, it went from how do you poison your wife and then a lot of searches on suicide.
Yeah.
Right?
I agree. Absolutely.
And again, this is all speculation. We'll never know, unfortunately.
No, we won't. This is us doing our best to investigate this.
To just try to understand.
So the forensic searches, so that's how we put them in context. The prosecution came out and I think this impacted the jury a lot. They thought, clearly she's looking for all these ways to poison.
Well, because they were cherry picking their information.
Well, you could say that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you could say that. So this is another piece of incriminating evidence. Doesn't look good.
There's still more computer searches to go through, or is that pretty much?
That's pretty much the sum. I mean, are there more? Yeah.
But I mean,
could we spend the rest of our lives going through them? Probably. There's over 500,000.
But that's
we
sort of the critical times.
The critical days and the critical times when we broke it down to. Next time on Direct Appeal, police recover plastic bags that came from Melanie and Bill's home. They compare these bags to the ones found with Bill's body. Are the bags a match? Direct Appeal is hosted by Meghan Sachs and Amy Shlosberg. Our producer is James Varga. The story arc was written by Meghan Sachs. Music and underscore by Desert Media. Recorded, mixed, and edited by Justin Kral at JC Studios. Special thanks to Alan Tockerman, whose work was integral to this production. If you have a tip, you can submit through our website or by emailing tips@directappealpodcast.com.